Hello, my name is Jade Snyder, and I am here today to talk to you about the inequality of education funding within the United States. As I am sure many listeners are aware, the number of issues currently being debated in regards to education is seemingly endless. Today I will be discussing how schools throughout the United States are funded, what the problems are with this current system, and some possible solutions that have been proposed. Unfortunately, as we will come to see, there is no perfect solution. Some are unaware of the fact that schools in the United States are funded by property tax. In other words, the homes within the vicinity of the school have a percentage of their taxes on their homes put towards education. This means that the price of the property dictates how much the school will receive. While a school in the high-priced San Diego area may receive more than enough money for their students, another school in inner-city Chicago may be getting far less than they need. These schools can even exist a short drive from one another, such as in Connecticut. Towns such as Greenwich receive ample funding due to the luxury style of living. Meanwhile, a short 30-minute drive away, students in Bridgeport don't have access to the resources such as guidance counselors, tutors, and well-maintained facilities. According to the State Department of Education, Greenwich spends $6,000 more per student than Bridgeport. The most unfortunate aspect of this style of funding is that students who live in places where the property tax is lower are often the students who need more help. For example, students who live in Bridgeport likely have less resources at home, whereas Greenwich students, on the other hand, get ample help from their educated and wealthy parents. Bridgeport students rely more on their school to help them. Many have linked this issue to higher dropout rates and lower overall performance in inner-city schools, such as these, leading to a lack of education and a resulting cycle of poverty within a single family. Take Public School 106, for example, in New York City, which has recently undergone multiple investigations about the treatment of students. Many articles expose the school for having no gym or art classes, no reading, writing, and math books, and no adequately clean classrooms. While the teachers are dedicated and devoted, there is only so much a group of hardworking individuals can do. The school was reportedly doing okay until Hurricane Sandy hit, and much of the school was impacted or destroyed. As a result, many of the students now reside in trailers, and the cafeteria is now used for multiple other activities, making it constantly run down and dirty. While this school may be an extreme example, it is not uncommon to find situations like these across the U.S. Many schools have little to no computers or books for students to learn. Sports equipment and facilities are falling apart to the point at which they are no longer able to be used. And the schools have become perpetually dirty from a lack of renovation and improvement over time. These schools are systematically failing students by depriving them of a proper education. In the case of the situation currently taking place in Connecticut, many have attempted to resolve the issue at hand. In the summer of 2016, a coalition of teachers, parents, and even students participated in a lawsuit in an attempt to solve this growing issue. The group, known as the Connecticut Coalition for Justice in Education Funding, or the CCJEF, argued that the, quote, state's failure to suitably and equitably fund its public schools has irreparably harmed thousands of Connecticut schoolchildren by limiting their future ability to take full advantage of the nation's democratic processes and institutions, to secure meaningful employment in the competitive high-skills, high-wage global marketplace, and to successfully continue their education beyond high school. The state's failure to provide plaintiff schoolchildren with opportunities to meet the state's own learning standards has resulted in a system that fails Connecticut students and offends the Connecticut Constitution. The complaint also alleges that the state's systematic school funding failure disproportionately impacts African American, Latino, and other minority students, in violation of the Connecticut Constitution and federal law, end quote. While the Supreme Court has not yet released their decision regarding this case, it is a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, Connecticut is not the first state to attempt to reach a solution regarding these issues. Since 1970, nearly every state has been involved in a case relating to the ever-growing problem. One solution that many have proposed is the idea of school choice, in which students are able to opt into schools in nearby neighborhoods rather than attending the schools within their own districts. Some argue that by disallowing this option, as some school districts or states do, students are locked into a failing school. While this may be true, having students attend a school outside of their own has its own problems. To start, many students are unable to travel to these other schools. With parents working multiple jobs, they do not have the time to take students to school, and the school-provided transport becomes the only option. This means that students who are in a more financially stable position, in which they are able to pay for public transportation or have their own car, would be able to travel to these other, better schools, while poorer students would be left behind. Additionally, by attempting to simply move students to other schools, the real problem is being ignored. If this option were to be pursued, the poor schools would continue to become poorer. Lastly, with students opting into the same schools that other students are already attending, these schools would become overcrowded and underfunded. While the student may choose to attend a school outside of their assigned one, their taxes do not have this option. Instead, their taxes will continue to fund the school that they are not going to, and meanwhile, the other school that they are now at is having to compensate for their attendance with no extra funding to go around. Another possible solution that some have mused over is the idea of the federal government funding more, or all, of education, as opposed to the less than 10% that they contribute now. However, just as every single other resolution, it contains its own concerns. One particular concern is the idea of standardization. At this point, schools are funded mainly by state and local government, leaving a lot of decision-making as to how schools are run up to these governments. This is extremely beneficial as it means that schools can run the best way possible for their individual students. It also allows more flexibility when trying out new ideas within the classroom. This has led to many innovations in regards to schooling that have become common practice. Unfortunately, this also means that some schools become neglected, such as in the case of Public School 106, as mentioned before. Federal funding may be the answer to this problem, as it would mean that the federal government could decide how the money was being used and choose to have all schools run the same way, leaving little room for mistakes. Unfortunately, the major question of where the money would come from is a common concern. With the U.S. government already in major debt, the use of money is heavily scrutinized, and in order for all schools throughout the Union to be covered by federal funding, a large sum of money would have to be produced from thin air. There are multiple other answers that have been proposed to this growing problem, yet just as those explained here, they have their own set of issues. As a result, this debate will continue to be a concern for students, teachers, and parents across the nation, as the future of our country receives a subpar education and minorities continue to be systematically oppressed. Therefore, it is important that we continue to work towards a solution.